All right, we're live. Special episode of the Metacast. I'm here with Shane Hazel from Bitcoin Veterans, Danny Lee from Little Switzerland Relief, and Micah from Christian Rangers. So this is like the dream team doing really good work on the ground in North Carolina. I had the pleasure of meeting all of these guys when I was out there. And I'm very excited to put together this panel and have a little bit of a conversation about, what's been going on out there, kind of dispel some of the myths, talk about, what needs to be done going forward. And then we could, kind of have more of a background too of you guys. I think, one of the really cool things about being out there was everything was really pretty interesting, pretty exciting. Like meeting all of these people who are very passionate about coming out, genuinely helping. Right. And, it's not every day that you're part of like a movement like this. So it was an honor to be on the ground with you guys. And I know a lot of you guys are still out there doing good work. The battle is far from over. So I wanted to start off, we'll throw it to everyone to kind of introduce themselves. We'll start with Danny. So Danny, welcome. And why don't you go ahead and give a little introduction?
Oh man. Well, thanks for having me on. And I guess it all started not long after you got around, right? So I moved here to Little Switzerland. I've traveled a lot throughout the years. I probably was on the road about 10 to 15 years full time, just traveling around for my work. And I came here about 2.5, 3 years ago, started homesteading, and I've been here about half the year, and then I travel about half the year. I've been coming here for a long time. I do a lot of backpacking. I love this land here. I've gotten to know it really well. Just all the people, driving around my motorcycle, doing a lot of backcountry stuff, and just sort of a big fan of the place, the people, and everything else. And then when the storm hit, I was actually in Argentina, and I caught the first red eye back, and realized I couldn't get a hold of any of my friends or family, and quickly started to realize how bad it was. And it's mind-boggling to leave and then come back and just see this kind of devastation on a biblical proportion is just insane. And then so we started my neighbor had already started a little food pantry, just like a little table down in front of Little Switzerland Inn. And I got here and I had loaded up as many supplies as I could bring from Charlotte, and just immediately started handing out stuff, and it just exploded. Like before we knew it, we became like a full distribution center, because my partner in what is now Little Switzerland Relief has been here for 10 generations and knows everybody here. And I've gotten to know the roads and everything around here pretty well. So if you don't know the area here, you will completely get lost. And it is extremely dangerous because of all the roads and how much everything has been washed just straight down the mountain. So we kind of fell into this position. Next thing we know, we just had a massive amount of volunteers helping out, and just kind of fell into this position to be able to really make an impact. And then, things have just kept snowballing. So.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the interesting things about that whole experience was I felt like no one had a plan. Everyone was kind of just running by the seat of their pants. And it was also one of those things where a lot of the people who were local leaders, they kind of basically were just the first people who took the initiative to knock on doors or try to set something up. And then they became this hyper focal point of all of these different issues and problems. And so like managing all of the requests and everything else coming in was seemed like a pretty difficult task.
Daunting, to say the least. Yeah, I mean, 16, 18-hour days nonstop for coming on like 2 months. Yeah, it gets insane, man. You see everything, the good, bad, and the ugly, and it'll restore your faith in humanity in the best of ways. Seeing everybody come together, and then and then there's other sides to it too that you just never expect to run into, and how you deal with those challenges, and just trying to look at every one of them like it's a good thing. I know that's super hard to do in really terrible, shitty situations, but just being able to have that mindset, which I've been trying to cultivate for a long time, has really served me through all this, and just trying to trying to always find the silver lining and just look at every roadblock as a good thing and just say, this is saving me from something else or teaching me something for down the road. Yeah. And then there's just so many other amazing things that have just continued to manifest. It's truly mind boggling.
Yeah. I think that is like a very interesting aspect of this is obviously, a horrible thing to happen, but I think the people coming together, right, that what has been done is really inspiring as well. I want to throw it to Shane because Shane, is the first time you're on the show. Excited to have you on here. Why don't you also give a little bit about yourself, kind of the Bitcoin veterans, what you guys were doing, and then how you found your way out to North Carolina.
Yeah. So I along with a couple other guys, I started Bitcoin Veterans. It's blown up in the past year and a half. It's a group of guys. We started off as veterans only, and it's grown into a conglomerate of civilians and veterans that are all involved in freedom tech. And so what we're trying to do is help people understand the way out of this really ridiculous system that we live in that's spiraling out of control, and giving them, kind of that emergency hatch. Here's your parachute as the parachute as the plane's going down. Trying to give them that kind of mission and purpose in their life with some sort of understanding. Like a lot of guys get out of the military and they're absolutely lost, and you got 22 suicides a day, and this group of guys is literally, our slogan is get on the mission, and get on the mission means find that liberty, find that freedom, find that passion again, and start working for your fellow man, before it was perverted by the U.S. government. So that was kind of the founding of Bitcoin Veterans. I live here in North Georgia, up here in the mountains, and as soon as we could drive, we started taking our Jeeps up to North Georgia, and then we found out about North Carolina. We found the Nantahala. We started to figure out that we could actually go skiing and snowboarding in Western North Carolina, up at Sugar and Hawks Nest and Cataloochee if you were real desperate, and just had to sneak in for a couple hours and get back home. So,
slide down the ice.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, if you can snowboard on ice, you can snowboard anywhere.
Heck yeah, man.
And everything's that much better. So, intimately familiar with, the country out there and the people for that matter. And it's one of those places that, when you grow up and you've got good memories of a place and you've spent some of your better formative years in places that, especially if you're going out and you're doing some camping and some hiking and you're kind of living outside for a few days, it's a different type of appreciation for an area. And, you kind of dispel the notions of, the banjo picking and, making, people, squeal like pigs in the backwoods and all that kind of stuff, right? You kind of get rid of that and you understand what it is. And so, we were actually, right in the eye of the storm, or slated to be in the eye of the storm here in North Georgia. And about 6 a.m., when it passed through here, we got some light wind damage. And then a couple days later is when we started to really hear about what was happening up there in North Carolina. And I kind of had a conversation with my wife, like, listen, this is that calling again, where I think a lot of guys ran off after 9/11. That was me back in the day. And so it was time to do it again. And she understood, it was one of those things where it was, you got the time, you've got, the space and all that kind of stuff, and everything is under control here at the house. So I started moving that way. And because we have such a great network of guys, a lot of special operations guys, and it was about, 3 hours into the trip after I picked up some communication gear, and my mission to go up there was go up, and do some force multiplication, find, men out there, maybe even veterans that were, pillars in their communities that were already doing something, and help those guys become, those guys that were going to lift that population out of the disaster that they, found themselves in. Luckily for me, one of my touch points within the founders here is a former Green Beret as well. And he talked to some guy who knew Micah, and he's like, hey man, these guys are over in Burnsville right now, and maybe you should hook up with Micah. And so Micah and I started going back and forth. And he's like, "Oh yeah, we could definitely use you here on the ground." And as soon as we got there, we set up communications. I found another Green Beret out on HLZ. He was also running a private landing field over there in Avery with fixed wing and rotary wing, and so we got him set up with with Starlink at both his home and the airfield. We got him set up with the Mesh-tastic radios that we have out there, and just started building relationships first and foremost, and starting to do key leader engagement with Micah. And I think that's when we met you guys up there at Little Swiss, man. And to start that way and to start to see who was out there, I'm sure you guys probably echo the sentiment, but the vibration from the guys that showed up in that time, in that place where there was no running water, there was no hotels to speak of, there was
no comms, no nothing,
right? You're literally going out here, you're going back 200 years almost, minus the combustion engine, and you're starting to find hope, and you're starting to see all these people who are leaning into the Lord. The vibration was absolutely amazing, and just the buzz around little Switzerland over in Marion, Burnsville coming back, and to see everybody who was grateful, and just this unification of guys. And I've said it a million times, if this was one of those things that let's say the conspiracies were true, this was the greatest networking event for the baddest ass guys I've ever met on the planet. And so
I second that. Yeah.
Yeah, here we are.
It's a weird silver lining, man.
Yeah, super weird. But also something I think we needed as men, and to see what guys pulled off in that time, and for me, I kind of relate it to what we used to do in the military, right? Is if you were in special operations, a lot of times you're autonomous, but you still answer to the man at the end of the day. There was no man. And so, it was yours to go out there and do with what you with, whether you were going to float or, sink, it was up to you. And to see these guys come together in small teams and just rip through, mission after mission after mission. And it didn't matter what it was. It's like, oh, we got to go save a dog, or we got to go, give a lady a house, or we need to, possibly go out here and help these guys build a road. It didn't matter what it was. And these things were getting done just at an amazing rate. So yeah, that's kind of my background and how I got involved with this, and, been kind of working with Micah in the background since I left there a couple weeks ago, getting some things straight over on our side. But yeah, you'd probably be back up there next week sometime. And obviously there's still a ton of work to be done.
Yeah, no, it's Micah looks like he's having connection issues, so he's coming in and out. Oh, he's back. Micah, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right, sweet. Yeah, no, it's no. Well, now that we have you back, well, I'll throw it to Micah to do a quick introduction as well. But I do kind of absolutely agree with your point, Shane. It's like you can always kind of think about the people that you're meeting in your life, like. The things that kind of led up to that were the filters, right? And I think for me, guys who are willing to go out there to figure things out, especially when there wasn't a lot of like organized support, right? Definitely not from the government, and less so from some volunteer groups here and there. But like a lot of the people that I met, even the ones who were in part of volunteer groups, were kind of like, yeah, we just signed up for this volunteer group so we could get through like the barrier, we could get in and talk to people. And help out. Like we didn't actually know this group beforehand. I think a lot of people were just like, no, we're just going to show up and do this, to your point. And, those are typically pretty interesting people. I think everyone I met, really good conversations, just, really good mindset, all the kind of right stuff. I think Micah's still suffering. He's like, he
just sent me a text. He said he keeps getting dropped for some reason. But yeah, to your point, man, like 100%. It wasn't like there was anything organized. Somebody came up, I think it's probably like 3 or 4 weeks in, and they just asked us like if the government was hanging out, or if the government was helping out. They're like, how much are they helping out? And we just all started busting out laughing. That was just like, you just couldn't help it. It was just like an immediate belly laugh. But It looks like Mike is back.
Yeah, dude, Danny. So we were at a fire station like a week and a half ago, and we were hanging out talking with the chief. We've been supporting him since the beginning, and they're highly efficient now. It's pretty awesome to see, and they're in management of 6,000 people directly. So anyways, with a very, very small crew, which is all volunteer, they're not paid a dime, and their crap was wiped out. So we're like 5.5 weeks in, right? We're chilling at this table, we're eating and kind of talking about like what we're going to do going forward. And two chicks walk in. They look like they just got out of college, God bless them. And they walk up to the desk and they're like, we're FEMA and we're here to help. And I was like, good God, man, is that where we're at right now? Like 5.5 weeks in?
Right on time.
Right on
Thanks
time,
for
man.
showing up.
Perfect attire, ready for the job.
City girls. I mean, God bless them, but it was just crazy.
I saw there was a group from FEMA that came up here. It was the only time I'd seen them. It was after like a month, and every one of them looked like they walked out of a Louis Vuitton store, and and they were ready just to go around like knocking on everybody's doors. Didn't know anything about anything up here, and I was just telling them, I was like, that's a horrible idea. Like the roads up here are absolutely demolished. Like if you don't know where you're going, like people are scared. A lot of these people still haven't. They don't know what's going on. Like we've been trying to contact everybody, or we've cut out everybody that we can that had to get cut out of their homes. We've get them generators, all that stuff. But it's like these people may have only been contacted once or twice, or they've been really disconnected. So I mean, you don't understand if you don't understand the dynamics of what goes on back in these hollers, and where these people are living, and it's like what Shane was saying. Like you're going back 200 years, and you really have to like reframe your reference points about your communication, and how you go about finding what these people need, because that's the other thing is most of them try not to hog up too much airtime or here or whatever, but like I remember it was like after week 1, and we were going up one of the teams was going up trying to give this guy water, and he didn't even want to take water, and he's like, no, give it to somebody who needs it, and then we're like, look, no, there's tons of it. We got tons and tons of it. Please take this. And then he finally takes it and he goes, thank you so much. He's like, I haven't had any water in 4 days, and that's how these people are. Like they do not like, and that became our credo almost, like in a lot of ways, was like, if you run into somebody that says that they don't need, give it to somebody who needs it more, that's the person that needs it. and you just have to take that attitude that the ones that are homeless, the ones that got their houses washed away, are the ones that are out there helping other people. The locals are the ones who rebuilt the massive amount of the roads and stuff around here. And they may not be perfect or covered in asphalt, but they're no longer completely shot where your car is going to drop 100 feet down the mountain. They've repaired it to where it's part dirt road at least, and it's been changed, and they pulled boulders from the gravel yard, and these guys are insane. I mean, they literally pulling each other up by like the teeth, coming up the side of the mountain with massive backhoes, and it's just, they've been doing this stuff since they were 12, So it's just they know these mountains, they know how to be self-sufficient, and not having phone service or electricity is kind of nice in some ways. I'm not saying it was in this circumstance, but they're plenty used to it, and we're resilient. That being said, there's still a ton of work to be done, and lots of devastation, a lot of lives lost and stuff like that. So it's a crazy mixture of everything.
Yeah, I guess so you talked a little bit about kind of the initial wave of work that needed to be done. I mean, to me, it seemed like that the biggest hurdle, at least initially, was just cutting out all the trees off the roads, right? And obviously, there's some areas that were more cut off, and they're a little bit more remote, and so therefore they're not getting as much love and attention early on. But it was like cutting out the trees, get the roads open, get like food and water out to people. And I think by the time you're kind of like a week or two in, like most of that work like was done, just because the good old boys out there, like like you're saying, they did it themselves, right? They kind of knew how to do it, and they just picked up the chainsaws and went to work. But I think, it was interesting because while we were out there, we were talking about like things that are different from like the online social media, the ideas that people are throwing around, like, oh, we need to give food, water, and support out, but like, how do we do that in the right way? And there were things like we were getting donated a lot of these generators that were pull starts, but really most of the people that needed generators needed a push to start because they're, the older people who needed the electricity. And
you'll fry the equipment. Like if you give somebody that's on medical equipment or like a CPAP machine or something, and you put them on a generator instead of an inverter, it'll fry the equipment. And that's the kind of stuff like people didn't know, like coming in, it's like, you just think you're trying to help somebody going to give them a generator. And it's like, you got to let these people know, like you need the right kind of information to be able to help. Because you can do more harm sometimes, if you really don't have the right frame of reference on what you're doing.
So like, I wanted to throw it to you, Shane, like, were there any like big hurdles that you didn't see that kind of came up, and how did you end up solving those?
Some of the stuff I think kind of related back to what you guys were just talking about is just getting to where you needed to be. And I will say, the guys over at Green Mountain, that area, Double Island and Green Mountain, if you guys haven't seen that area, been out there.
I was just there this afternoon. Yeah.
Those guys got hit by 5 tornadoes at the same time that they had, the 3 years worth of water dropped on them in a couple of days. And so, when I think, one of the, I think it was Lieutenant Dan out there that was telling me, like, one of them was an F5. And if you go through there, it looks like somebody dropped a, box of matchsticks still. And he was telling me, they were going to probably take, 3 to 4 months to be able to get to some places that were out there just because of the amount of logs. And I mean, that's an incredible feat. So, and to everybody's credit out there that, whether it was guys on saws or guys in earth moving equipment. I mean, I think I was coming in, within a few days there, and I was coming down out of, Johnson City, because that's the way you had to come up and around, and it, ridiculous route. But by the time I got to a place where a bridge had totally washed out, these guys, whether they were from Western North Carolina or from, West Virginia, they had taken these gigantic culverts, some giant boulders, and built this, you would come along and usually, you would go flat through this crook, in the road. Instead, these guys had built this, down and then up, but it was passable, even in a truck with a, trailer. And you're like, good God, the amount of ingenuity in terms of getting, supplies and getting routes open and just, making the effort known. I think that was one of the big ones. But, for us, establishing communication is exactly what we came out there to do and introduce people to. So we brought out this stuff called Meshtastic. If you're not familiar with Meshtastic, I highly recommend you get familiar with it. It is a open source, decentralized bit of kit, if you will. And I mean that because a lot of times you're going to build some of the stuff. And if a knuckle dragger like like me can do this kind of stuff, anybody can. So what it does is it communicates with your phone through Bluetooth, but it also communicates through the 915 megahertz. So it's a experimental band. Anybody can use this, and Meshtastic is one of those things where if you've got it up there, you can download it to your phone. You can buy one of these little devices. They run on almost no power. You can set it up in client mode, router. You can set it up in a repeater mode, and basically what this will be able to, what you can do is, it doesn't matter if everything else is down. If people are on Meshtastic radios, you can at least get communication out via text through your phone via these radios. And what we started to do was, put these things into, the guys' hands that would do in, the SNR mission, and then the guys that were flying. So the National Guard, we started putting those in helicopters, and we went over to the airport, started putting them in fixed wing. So we started to build this coverage, and we had like 2. I think Mount Mitchell had one when we first got there, and maybe some other guy had one when we got out there. By the time we left, we had connected everybody in that valley with over, I think it was somewhere around 60 or 70 different Meshtastic radios. And we had connected those guys to guys in Raleigh, Greensboro over into Knoxville, Chattanooga, and then as far down as Atlanta from when we put a repeater on top of Big Bald. And I think that was about 270 miles away. So getting that piece in there and just getting people familiar with, another form of communication that works was one of the big, one of the things that we wanted to get out there and do. So kind of a side project, but at the same time, if you're looking at being prepared for an emergency situation and being one of those people in your town, man, that is a great thing to build your community with.
Yeah, because I think I realized when I first got out there, the biggest problem that Danny and the other people we talked to, Emily and Suzanne, they were dealing with on the ground is because they had taken the initiative and started helping people out and started to take ownership of the distribution centers and all this kind of stuff. They became like the go-to for everyone around them. So like they gave their phone number out and people were giving their phone number out. And so they're just constantly inundated with messages, texts, all this kind of stuff. And so it was really, really difficult for them to kind of manage, how do you deal with all this influx, and part of it was, well, you need to start connecting people so that they're not routing everything through one person. Right. And I think that was the value of a system like that. I think also, Danny, you guys set up the Facebook page and started doing that. I know we had talked, before I left about kind of using that as a centralized database for things coming in and out. You've done a lot of really good work with like the email that goes out daily on the drop sites. Do you want to talk a little bit to kind of the communication network that you guys have going these days?
Yeah. Probably two parts. So Shane was saying something there, and I feel like it's pretty controversial, but I feel like it's worth bringing up just for posterity, and maybe because I'm still pissed off a little bit. Yeah, so like some of the stuff that we were dealing with was definitely the communication stuff, right? Like it's been a huge thing since the beginning, and we have terrible cell service up here on a good day. But I became aware not that long after everything happened that we had access to these cows, which are these mobile 5G network towers, and come to find out the reason that we could not have them set up was because someone was going to lose their FCC license if they turned them on. And the only way that you can turn those on, and we would have immediately had cell service, but the only way that those can get turned on is by a state official applying to FEMA to turn them on. And unless that gets pushed through those channels, it doesn't happen. And so you start looking at that and you realize that even at the state level up there, they don't know enough. They're not ready for this kind of stuff. They don't know that there's these kind of protocols that need to take place, and it's like, so we were trying to get in touch with them, and, and that's a credit to like Shane, right? Like what you guys are doing with Meshtastic, because we're having to rely on, I don't know, what you might call like prehistoric in this case kind of technology, right? Like, I mean, it's amazing technology, but it shouldn't actually have to be used, right? Like we're using a Lego set to try and build a bridge when, we have this super high end technology that's sitting there that we can't use because the officials they don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, it's wild when like something like Meshtastic and Starlink, for the price of $30 and maybe $300 or $400 respectively, it can be deployed and automatically it changes everything in terms of communications. And if people don't understand like communications for an event like this is how you start to organize everything that's coming in. It's how you organize volunteers. It's how you direct people. It's how you start talking about what routes are safe. It's anything and everything all at the same time. And for the government to sit on their ass on, equipment that they've literally paid probably billions of dollars for and cannot and will not deploy when these systems for less than $500 are doing the job for them from civilians. I don't think that's very controversial. I think it's just a glaring black eye
Dude, it was, man. We even had like a Verizon tower here. Like it was after a couple weeks. I mean, because getting in touch with everybody was so damn hard, man. Like when you have no cell phones, like Starlink kind of works. You got to be in the right spot like this, and it's like it sucks, and you got a million people, you got everybody calling you, right? Your phone's ringing constantly, and you're constantly dropping calls, and you got everybody running up to you. Like it's super hard. And so yeah, it's so difficult to try and to explain like how challenging it is when all that stuff is there. And we had access to get a Verizon tower up. Verizon had told us we could get the tower up, and then they blocked us off. It was I'm trying to remember which organization it was, but it ended up being like the police and everything. That I'm not sure who was giving them the orders, but they said if we cut our way in there through the trees and everything to get the generators up, that they would arrest us. When we could have gotten it up, and we could have been getting to these people. And I mean, it would have been an absolute game changer to have cell service right then. And for us to be told that we would be arrested for going up there to try and get these things back online was just such a slap in the face. I mean, it just makes you want to puke. So
you're talking about people's lives. I mean,
you're talking about people's lives, man. Yeah. Like people are dying up there. People don't have their insulin. One thing I couldn't find EpiPens anywhere, man.
Who told you that, Danny?
What's that?
He asked who told you that? Who
told you that?
There was it was a group here locally. My neighbor was telling me about it, and we were trying to send people up there to do it, and they wouldn't let us.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of stories that were coming out of, different groups that weren't being let in past certain regions, or a lot of things that were hamstrung. And I think that's a big thing is, when Shane, you were kind of pointing out, it's like it took like a couple of days for people to realize how bad things were in there. Just because
there's no comms.
Yeah, exactly. And then you'd also hear a lot of these stories that were coming out, and it was hard to tell what was true and what was exaggeration, what was kind of like, anger bait kind of stuff of like, oh, like screw the government because they're doing this, that, or the other thing. But I do think that there was a lot of truth to a lot of things, right? I'm not surprised at this story of, the government blocking you guys from, putting up the cell towers. Were there any like crazy stories that you guys ran into of just, government bureaucracy getting in the way of getting things done?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely could think of a few. Shane, do you want to, or one of you guys want to take it as well?
I mean, if Mike, are you able to comment on this real quick? Because Mike has been on the ground there for quite some time, and
Can you hear me right now?
Yeah, we
can hear you.
Yeah, is my mic working?
Yep.
All right. Yeah. No, I think it's interesting. The communications piece is something that I think we identified early, and it shows and also the government at just getting basic communications established within a community, because we're on like week 7 almost. And still, like Danny said, there is no communications up. I mean, there's no cell phone signal. We got to drive around with Starlink on our cars just to have signal. And then if you're out there working and you're without signal for a whole day, you really get behind like a week in Western North Carolina, because it's such a dynamic environment, and the needs of the populace and the issues change, it seems like hourly, so communications is paramount. I think what Shane and I have worked in, and I know Danny with the Starlink, I think we have a good strategy with the Starlink and with 5G and with the Helium Net, where we can provide the 5G to the people, like cover down on a whole valley and then implement Mesh-tastic.
I mean, and that really needs to be done like yesterday. I mean, it needed to be done like a long time ago, and it's still bad. Like the thing is here as locals, like we're used to having terrible service, right? Like it's always awful. Like if you walk down the hill from my house like 100 yards, like you're not getting any signal, and you drive anywhere around here and you're going to be losing signal for miles at a time. And that's just how people, that's just normal around here, right? But now, like, we really need, to up that. Like, I mean, we're kind of back at where we were before, but considering the state of things, like, it's not adequate by any means.
Yeah, Meta, to kind of bring it back, I know he's having some communication problems over there, but in terms of government interference, couple of things really come to mind. And the first thing I got there, I met a guy, black guy, not a ton in Western North Carolina, first and foremost. And he was providing security for one of the fire departments out there. And I won't say, exactly who it was, but they basically came up to him and said, "You need to leave." And this was one of those things where, there was other witnesses that saw the whole thing go down. And, instead of making a big scene, him being a good man and being part of the Christian Rangers, he said, "Yeah, hey, I'll leave, whatever. And, don't worry about it." And, came back and obviously told us what was going on. And that was, one of the first things I saw. I hadn't been on the ground maybe an hour and a half yet. And
wow.
This is already, one of the first things. As I'm coming in, I saw people getting turned away. I told the one of the deputies on the road that I was part of the Army's PACE plan coming in. And I was like, "Hey, listen, I got to be in there." And they're like, "Well, you got to travel at your own risk." But they were literally turning people away that wanted to come out, who had the capability. You saw, they were loaded down for bear with, to come out there and be assets. And so, that was another side that I saw, that, government was, I understand keeping some people out that want to go sightseeing and all that kind of shit. But at the same time, like, this is still America. And, if these guys say that they want to go in and help, then who the hell is, the local law enforcement to stop them? And also, I guess, within the first day that I was there, the dusting that happened over there in Burnsville at the Save More parking lot where we were headquartered out of. We had set up a command over there, what we call a talk. And yeah, man, we had a Blackhawk with, no identification numbers or anything. I think this actually went viral on.
I think I remember seeing this. Yeah.
Yeah, and to be a guy who's been around this kind of thing, where you've conducted helicopter landing zones in the past and know exactly what you're looking for. Let me tell you where you don't set down a helicopter or bring in a helicopter is into a parking lot with these giant light poles that are everywhere and a number of people. And I understand it was somewhat getting into like the pinky time, or what we call dusk. And man, it sent things flying. People got hurt. There was shit flying all over the parking lot. And in terms of interference, and this is just what we saw. So what and I don't want to do this, I want to at least give credit where it's due. A lot of the local, first responders were up to their eyeballs in emergency and, working around the clock, going out day after day after day, and all the credit in the world, especially to the local guys. And I think that's where a lot of emergency response really lies, because at the end of the day, you're not going to be able to count on the feds, and you're not going to be able to count on the state, because wherever there's, a huge amount of money involved, there's also going to be strings attached, and there's going to be the good old boy network. So, to say, those good things about that level of government, yeah, great job, guys. What I will say about the state and the feds is I didn't see them. I didn't see them anywhere at any time the entire, time I was out there, which is substantial. And the amount of ground we covered, between me and Micah, and, a couple weeks after that, it was me and my team from the Bitcoin Veterans. We were out and we were covering literally hundreds of miles a day. And we were stopping at all sorts of places, whether it was, resupplies, neighborhoods, individuals' houses, doing well checks, you name it. Not once did I see anybody from FEMA. I did see some guys from the 82nd. I saw some guys from the 101st. I saw some guys from the National Guard out of Charlotte who were flying. But this is all military, and I saw guys who were literally in the military in contact with some of my buddies down at MARSOC, up there doing command and control, on their own time, on their own weekend, where a lot of people, in commands like that, whether it was down at Fort Bragg or at Camp Lejeune or any of the other, giant bases in North Carolina, which is a huge
lot of
state.
them that came up.
Yeah, all those guys wanted to come up, and a lot of them got denied even doing that. So, in terms of the government showing up, yeah, I think locals showed up big, but I will tell you the deafening silence and the interference. Whether I shouldn't gloss over the fact that when minutes and seconds counted there in the very early days, the FAA shut down the entire airspace for drones and for everybody who was flying sortie missions out there to get supplies in, get people out, and those kind of things, because some people wanted to fly in during campaign season and get their pictures made with whoever. And I don't care which
that
side,
fucking pissed me off. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, to shut
that
down
really pissed me off. Like,
yeah. And it should.
Yeah.
It should absolutely enrage anybody and everybody that they're putting photo ops over over an emergency situation where seconds count.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, 1,000%, man. That's
and I think that was one of the biggest things that people were seeing online, and they like didn't know if it was true or not, was just like how badly is the government really handling this? And I think that it was kind of like the worst of both worlds, in the sense that they were very absent for the most part, and then in the ways that they were there, they were just constantly getting in the way and screwing things up, right? And I think again, like the silver lining, the positive side is like the locals there did like an amazing job of standing up. Like I was really impressed coming into Little Switzerland, because everyone's running around like crazy, right? But like supplies were going out, people, things were getting to where people needed. Like you also had locals who, because they knew the area, because they knew the people around them, they were like, okay, like these people need this kind of stuff, and like they're not going to take it, so we have to kind of force them to take it. And I did find that whole point that you were making earlier, Danny, pretty funny, because there was points even when I was there where people come in to donate supplies, and some of the guys who were working the lodge, and they were taking stuff, they were like, oh, we're fine on this, we're fine on that. I was like, no, just take it, because like we'll find a place for it. I think that was another thing too, is like worrying about supplies coming in, dropping off, and making sure that you guys had the the storage space for it. I guess that's the next thing that I'm kind of curious to get into is, now that it's getting cold, and, I think a lot of the kind of initial wave of getting things, set up has kind of done. Like, what are you guys focused on right now? What do you think? Like, if you were to kind of reach out, people, because people keep asking this, I see this on the timeline every once in a while, if people say like, what do you guys need right now? Like, what is the way to help? Like, who should we be donating to? All that kind of stuff. Like, what would you tell people on that?
I would tell people right now, I mean, we need building supplies, we need housing stuff, we need the culverts and things like that for rebuilding the roads. There's still so many of these back roads and stuff like that where the bridges need to be fixed. We're working hard right now. We're built again. God, man, I sound like a broken record, but like the annoying stuff of like what you're allowed to call housing and things like that. Otherwise you can't even get it pushed through. Like the difference between, I can't even say them right, because I'm afraid we'll get in trouble. Like, but it's like the
I can say it.
Can you? Can you?
I can.
Yeah.
I mean, it's another side of government getting in the way. Like there are county commissioners out there that won't allow things like tiny homes on property.
Yeah. I can't say it because it's like,
there's you know, like defects. Basically, you know, kids are getting ripped away from families because their homes got washed away, and they're not allowed to be in these tiny home type situations, you know, where they're literally out of the elements. These families have lost everything. At least they're together. They're warm.
They got generators. They got everything. Yeah.
It's better than freezing to death, and it's definitely better than the state going out and taking kids through force, you know, and saying, you know, there's a lot that's wrong with this situation. And, you know, with the government being a bunch of satanic pedophiles, you kind of wonder, you know, I know that may be spicy for some people, but, you know, in disaster situations, I think people need to understand, like, there are a lot of people that are not there for good reasons. You know, the guys on this show that showed up, and, you know, you got to think in your, you know, the back of your mind sometimes, like, you know, who isn't like this? And then you find out very quickly that there are a lot of people that aren't like this. They're organized, and they're literally doing the unthinkable with kids and people in these situations where they disappear and they're never heard from again, because in a disaster situation where you can't account for all heads, it's very easy to dismiss somebody's disappearance, you know, as, you know, part of the disaster rather than being taken and trafficked.
Yeah, I found that, like, you know, particularly concerning, right? Because again, it's this idea of, like, the government was either absent or they're getting in the way in a big way.
Mm-hmm.
And this whole, like, focus on, you know, like, oh, we have to make sure kids are okay, so we're going to take them away from their parents because we've deemed them unable to, you know, take care of them.
Well, the property gets condemned and stuff like that. And then, all right, I feel like it's so easy. I keep having to reel myself in with this, right? Because there's sometimes
you keep laying them up, man.
I know you can just keep lining them up, and at the end of the day, I guess what this is kind of where I'm at personally, and this kind of getting a little personal, but like, I'm really just trying to, like, hold on to, like, that attitude of gratitude, and just being able to be positive and it be playful and loving, you know, and that kind of just comes back around to, I don't want to take away from the fact that we do still desperately need help.
Oh, we're on.
Yeah, we added you guys. How's it going? I see you're stepping in for Micah. So do you guys want to quickly introduce yourselves, and then we'll get back to complaining about how the government is just doing a horrible job?
Hey, we're into that. Yeah. So
Yeah.
my name's Charlie. I'm with the Christian Rangers up in here since the first day with Micah. And this is Cam. He's also been here since that first day, October 2nd, with the Christian Rangers. So Micah apologizes, but his service wasn't great. He's actually en route back here from Tennessee.
Sweet. Well, thanks for joining us. We're kind of currently talking about just how bad the government has been kind of doing stuff, you know, specifically, like, right now, it's just talking about how they've been, you know, taking kids, putting them into foster homes, right? Or at least that's what they're saying. But, you know, otherwise, and again, I think this just goes to, like, bureaucracy and silliness. And I think that the thing that's really infuriating in my mind is there's so many other things that they can be focusing on where it's like, you know, they could actually be helping potentially, right? We're talking about, like, the comms networks and all those kinds of other things. And here they are just kind of getting in the way of, you know, families taking care of their kids. It's pretty infuriating.
Yeah, something that we kind of got a link on about 2.5 weeks ago was the shelters closing down. That was when the Mitchell County shelter was closing, and then all of the Yancey County shelters. And I had a couple different points of contact that told me that those shelters were not scheduled to shut down on the days they shut down. They were shut down by a police force coming and telling everybody that they needed to leave. And, you know, and they're telling everybody, hey, we have homes for everyone. Everybody's accounted for. But then my contact on the ground says, yeah, those 4 people, specifically in that Mitchell County shelter, there were only 4 people, but those 4 people were not taken care of. And those 4 contacts were then sent to us as the Christian Rangers. So what can you do for these 4 people? And what extent do you have? Maybe it's not housing, but they were able to find, like, a friend who had a couch they could sleep on, but they're just trying to look for work, kind of where we could fill in and kind of fill those gaps where the government was letting them down. But those people were not taken care of. They had no opportunity to find shelter. It was not something that happened. That's a blatant lie.
Yeah, and you touched on something that I think is really important to illustrate as well, which is like the economic situation, right, is going to be really rough, for the foreseeable future, right? Like a lot of businesses were destroyed. It's not like people are going to be passing through. There's going to be like a lot of tourism or anything like that. So like, how do you think, and maybe Danny, this is a good question for you, is like, are you guys thinking about the economic side of things? And like, if so, like to what degree are you trying to prepare for that?
Yeah, I mean that's an interesting one, right? Like, for instance, we're sourcing a lot of lumber and stuff, so we've sourced like $100,000 worth of lumber and supplies, but and luckily it's been coming in. We've had to buy a good amount of it through donation money. I guess what I was trying to say is like one of the local places that we would love to source from, we got washed down the river, right? So it's like it's not even an option, and yeah, economically it's going to be tough, right? Because like tourism is a huge part of the economy here. So, and right now it's very dangerous to be a tourist here. So it's dangerous for them, and it's dangerous for us because we have to go and save them if something happens, and that's taking away from all the other things that we're doing. Um, that being said, it's you really got to get creative, and I guess this is one of the things I that we really tried to take on as well as the communication between all the drop zones, the ones that are still operating and active, um, and it comes back to communication, right? So you're dealing with a lot of people here that are not great with technology. So it's not like the people probably that are watching this here, right? Like these people don't use their cell phones much. Like if you can get them to open an email or a text message or a phone call, you're doing great. And so that's why we tried to put together this whole email chain and a call center to reach out to them on the daily. And we really need help with that. We need volunteers for the call center to be reaching out to over 100 drop sites every day, to be adding to the supply chain list. We're desperately trying to get a CRM in place just so we can get a good SMS campaign going. And that's been really challenging. We need help like that too, right? Just to simplify it for these people to be able to find out what they need every day and be able to get it to them. And so right now the it's so hard for me to actually wrap my brain sometimes around like thinking long term because we're still so much in the middle of just trying to we're still trying to keep people from dying, right? Like there's still people living in tents, there's still people that don't want to leave their homes. The water is completely ruined in so many of these places, and it's going to be for a long time. We need a ton of rain collection systems and water purification systems, and it's we're still very very much in that phase. So like the economy is just like it's like let's just survive.
Yeah, I think that's a great point because when we talk about long term here, what we think about is long term with the soil, with the water. We don't think of like the economic standpoint. We think of if I go fishing in the river right now and I eat that fish, what is that going to do to my health? If I kill a deer and I eat that deer, what is that going to do to my health? So we're working with Resilience Recovery, and they have taken on the responsibility of kind of like doing the soil and water samples so they can see how we can look at our soil and how we can make it better, see what's in it, first of all, because we don't know. We have absolutely no idea what's in the soil or the water. And then what needs to happen to make that where we can eat what is grown and we can eat the fish, we can eat the deer. So that's what we instantly think of.
So much of it's gotten polluted, and all those, I mean, we've had issues with that for, practically the last 100 years here in these valleys because all of it's floated down from Tennessee and these manufacturing plants that have dumped stuff in there for years. And I've heard horror stories about it just since all this has been going on. And the Tyvek suits melting in the rivers and stuff like that from when they're doing search and rescue. And there was a really bad plant over in Marshall, and yeah, the sewage plants and everything like that. Nobody was prepared for this. Plus, like they've already been kind of inept at at managing it for years and years. That's why like some of the Tow and these different rivers are so polluted. So it's like now it's at a catastrophic level. So
right. In 2018, I think 2019, where there was a big incidents with the river where the mining companies had the stuff that was leaked into the river. That was a known thing. There's reports that you can read. There's studies of how that has affected the rivers. Just in that little bit that they had into the river, just that little tiny bit of material, whatever it was. So now when you're talking about specific things like Duke Energy plant with the fly ash, and the fly ash has heavy metals in it, and they have these huge piles of fly ash outside of the facilities, and then after it there are no piles of fly ash anymore. They're gone, and they are in the dirt. They are in the air because that dirt is now in the air and dust. So that's heavy metals, and that's now in my system, in Cam's system, and everybody that's getting sick, that's in our systems, and you don't even think about it because you don't see it. So when we think long term, it's hard to think about the economical standpoint, because I think about like what's going to happen to my health in a month from now. I don't know.
I pulled a water sample about 2 weeks ago, and I was specifically looking for water that would be questionable. And I came across a puddle that had like a white crust on top of it. And as soon as I broke that crust to get the water, I would say instantaneously I started coughing. And it was a pretty gnarly cough. And that cough lasted probably up until 4 days ago.
Wow.
So I mean, we got to think. I mean, I spent 5 years in Afghanistan. Let's talk about long-term effects. You know what I mean? Like,
we've had burn pits, but now we're worried about what is a month here do to us.
Yeah. No, it's kind of like first responders at 9/11 kind of stuff, right? Where it's like, that was one of the things that happened on later down the road, and it's like, were these people getting the care that they needed and all this kind of stuff? It's crazy to hear that, because again, I think this lived a relatively short time in people, like it stayed around online a lot longer. And it was good that it did, but like it's not really talked about as much now, but the problems are still there, right? These are very kind of long-term stuff. So
sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but something that happened today is talking to a congressman, and I think he's in Michigan today. Talking to a congressman in Michigan, he didn't know that this had happened. Like, he was not aware of this.
Too busy campaigning.
Right. Yeah. So one of the Christian Rangers on our team today filled that congressman in on just everything, good, the bad, how the people are coming together to help, but then also the bad, what is actually happening. And they didn't know, and they aren't aware. Even my mom knows I'm here, but she doesn't know what I'm doing. They haven't seen it on the news. It's not on CNN.
Even through the community itself, you have people that live in the town area proper, and they're like, that they're not even aware that people are still in tents. They think because the city is relatively back to normal, that everywhere else is back to normal. They're completely detached from reality on the ground.
No, I mean, these are the disenfranchised people from the get-go, right?
Yeah.
So, it's like they were forgot about a long time ago, and they're still in that same way.
Yeah, until it comes to tax season and the IRS wants the money that
they remember them then.
Should have worn my tax lib t-shirt.
Property taxes go up, and
hey, well, they want that property tax for that RV they got rented to them, or they got leased to them, signed over to them.
Yeah. I've been hearing some crazy stories about people whose properties or their house got destroyed and flooded, and now they're kind of like living in a tent or whatever, and then I don't know if it's like FEMA or some government organization comes by and they're like, oh, we'll buy your land for like a tenth of what it's worth or even less, right? Are you guys hearing about that? Does it feel like there's a little bit of a land grab going on?
There's a lot of weird stuff going on. Not even from like land grab standpoint, just like strictly like how flood zones and stuff are changing. Because now like all these people's homes are getting rezoned and stuff like that. So, whatever's left of their home, like say their house was still repairable, they can't even rebuild on it because now it's in a flood zone. Yeah. And then there's a lot of people, like we're trying to help people, and get cut out the rest of their property. We could put in, a temporary housing situation there, and we can't, because if we touch it, then FEMA won't even give them the little bit of money that they're going to give them.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, and we're just completely, they're just trying to tie our hands from every angle, because it's like, instead of loosening things up to help these people, they're just continuing to like tighten down at the same time and just cutting off whatever life supply that they have.
But if this were on a coastal town or in Florida or any beach area, they're going to be rebuilt, and the same thing's going to happen next year. No one's going to blink an eye.
Right. I mean, the fact that you can get insurance on a $2 million beach house, in Florida that has a hurricane every year, like, I don't know. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole, but
we probably should, because I mean, a little bit of this is, there are obviously some properties out there with some, let's just call it, quartz and lithium that people want, and very powerful people from BlackRock and other organizations. We heard, I mean, firsthand, within the first few days of being out there, that there were Chinese nationals out there. Exactly. That's Chinese nationals going up to people who had just lost everything and offering them money. And I think it was probably within a week that the governor was on stage in North Carolina telling people that they should literally take the buyout, and there are places that we should not rebuild. And that is exactly what they do everywhere else. They don't take the buyouts. They just rebuild, and the next season they do it all over again. And that's there's obviously a concerted effort out there for land rights because of mineral use.
Yeah, we watched that video, Shane, and actually, when we talk about like them coming in to buy the land, it wasn't the week of, it wasn't the week after, it was the month prior to the hurricane. They were coming in trying to buy the land. So it wasn't after the fact, it was before and after. So trying to buy that land was very much happening before the hurricane hit, and then the hurricane hit, and then they went in again to try to do that. So what we're seeing here is a damned if you do, damned if you don't, meaning that I cannot rebuild on my land because a disaster has happened. And I also can't put a camper on it because maybe I don't have somewhere to put my sewage. And then they want to not give me assistance if I take a donated camper from somebody. So I can't rebuild on my land, and I can't get assistance for that. But I can't take assistance because then I'm also just doing what I think is right, but it's not what I should be doing. But who knows what they should be doing in this instance? Like, again, these are not people that they have the means to do this. They don't have internet. They can't watch this podcast and see what's happening. They don't know.
That's right. There's also the falsification of information. Like Cam was saying, is there's so much stuff that is wrong, but there's also places that just got some heavy rain, and those places that just got the heavy rain, they're fine. But if they take a soil sample or they take a water sample and they want to falsify information so that they can condemn the property and then take it through condemnation, then these people don't have the resources to fight this in court. And that's one of those things where you just can't think about how evil these people in powerful places are until they absolutely reveal themselves in their actions out here.
Yeah, and I think
talked about why nobody has flood insurance here, and we actually had a sheriff out here in this area talking to us last week for a different reason, for a good cause. But he was actually in one of the houses on Cane Creek, which is the first road that we went into here in Burnsville, right? And he let us know where his house was, and he talked about how that specific area where he lives, which I mean, completely cut off, could not get into there until 4 days after. One thing that did happen though is that Starlink was back in that hauler. So by the time we got there, they'd already had a Starlink in the back of the hauler next to the cemetery and the bridge where it was out. But what he talked about is that no one there had flood insurance where the river got up to 500 meters wide, because to get flood insurance, you have to pay $8,000 out of pocket up front. You can't make payments on it. You have to pay $8,000 to get that flood insurance. So absolutely fucking no one had the flood insurance.
5% of people is what I heard.
Right. That's why.
All right.
If you make
I didn't realize they were making it that hard. That's nuts.
Yeah, and I also heard that like a lot of people who had their homes damaged by these floods that came through, like they were so ridiculously far above like the previous floodplain that it would make no sense for these people to have gotten flood insurance to begin with.
Dude, I've talked to people that family's been here since the 1700s, man, and there's no record of anything coming up this high.
Yeah,
Right.
what is it, 40, 50 feet in some cases where the river crested? I mean, that's absolutely insane in terms of a flood stage. Like that doesn't exist.
It's just mind-boggling.
And even then, like if it's not by a flood, if your house is from a landslide, from a tornado that came through, that's not then covered.
What were
Like
they saying, an airburst or something?
We had
the
earthquakes.
airburst that happens in that storm.
We have
And who
earthquakes
determines that?
right here. It's nuts.
Because I have one of my points of contact who that is her past where she can come in from an insurance standpoint and tell you, okay, yeah, the flood didn't do it, but the airburst did it. So you need to put this on your insurance claim. And then all of a sudden, 2 weeks later, she was scared for her life and needed a safe place to stay because she was being ran out of Mitchell County because they didn't want her there helping those people do that anymore.
It's nuts.
So my question right now is what do you think, like if there was one thing that I don't know, say you got like on a call with Trump, right, and could tell him
What's up, Daddy?
yeah, what would you tell him to do? Like what do you think is like the thing that would like best enable you guys to actually provide, help on the ground?
Cut
I mean,
through
from
the
our
red.
perspective, it's maybe just
Yeah,
like
go ahead.
listening to the people that are here. Instead of listening to someone that's never been in North Carolina, that's never stepped foot here, that has no actual real concept of what the people are going through, listen to groups like Bitcoin veterans, like the Little Switzerland Relief Society, the Christian Rangers. Listen to those people and what they're going through and take those as lessons learned.
You got to change the restrictions. I mean, this is still a
For
disaster
sure.
area, and people are treating it like everything's back to normal. It's not.
It's not.
It's still a disaster. It's still emergency. And the fact that we're being restricted on delivering a tiny home or a camper to someone's property because of a memorandum written in 2019.
Yeah,
a lot's changed since 2019.
we have 20, and we're trying to deliver 20 tiny homes, and we can't because of this code.
Yeah. So like,
Yeah,
you got to be realistic. I've been saying this whole time. Expectation management. Like, things have changed.
common sense isn't so common, especially when it comes to government.
Yeah.
And it's just getting down to the practical nature of what do people need to live, and stop making it about bureaucracy and gerrymandering and everything else, and just make it about giving people a chance to survive. Like if what are the basic human needs? We need fresh water, good food, and a sense of community. And those are things that we got the community, but we're really struggling on the water, and not to mention like everybody up here is eating prepackaged food all the time. Like, I mean, everybody's been surviving on MREs. We could just use some fresh vegetables and things like that. I've been working with garden clubs in Charlotte just to try and bring us up fresh food so that people aren't constantly eating canned food. It's it's a systemic issue in a lot of ways that goes way beyond
that, Danny.
Yeah.
And I do not mean to cut you up. I'm so sorry. But
please,
another thing that continues to get brought up to us, and this is not even from our group, but where we're at, we have links to a lot of people that are running different distribution centers, and they talk about how they have access to fresh fruit and fresh vegetables, and they have crates of them there. But because people come in and they can't shop for themselves, and then they don't know what's there. I don't know that I can get batteries. I don't know that I can get fresh vegetables. I don't know. I've never been in a hurricane before. I don't know that I need to go to a hub to get anything. So I give them my list of 6 essential items I need, and then I get those 6 items. I don't get the fresh vegetables. They're going to go bad because nobody knows that they can even get them there.
Yeah. I mean, that's it. Like, sorry, go ahead, Shane.
No, Danny, finish up, man. Go ahead.
It's just like, if the government wanted to do something, man, like come in, like stop providing food stamps for, the Dollar General of, Fruit Loops. Just like give us some basic stuff, right? Like give us the opportunity to do this stuff. And, you look at the systemic issues of how it's illegal to collect rainwater in so many different states and things like that. Like, let us use the natural resources that we have to to take care of our home here, and it's we supply in Spruce Pine. I think something that's important to note is, like, we supply the crystals for the main processors, like, around the world, like all the phones, the computers, everything that everybody is watching this on right now. Odds are that those crystals come right here from our home in Spruce Pine. We've got the highest quality of them in the world. We also have Baxter that supplies the vast majority of, like, IVs and stuff like that. All those materials, it's like we've got some major resources here. These are the oldest mountains in the world, and to tie our hands, from being able to take care of our own people is what we need. We need the freedom to be able to at least just take care of ourselves. Like, if you're just either get out of our way and actually let us take care of ourselves, or come in and actually find out what you can do to be help. When they started showing up, like when some of the military operations started showing up, they showed up and started asking me where they needed to go. They didn't even have good topography maps. They had those free maps from the state park service that they were trying to figure out where to go with. And I was telling them, this is not what you need. You need a good topography map, because you got to understand, like, if you go over to Pensacola and these different places, it goes up 4,000 feet and 4 miles on the Black Mountain Crest Trail. Everything on the backside of that and Bolins Creek and everything is going to be completely washed out. Like, you need to look at how the water flows through here, and you're going to figure out where these people need the most help. And they were clueless, and it's just, I don't know. I guess it's that, like, how do you fix that communication? Like, the issue is there on every level. Like, how do you get the communication from what we need at the most basic, simple levels, and keep it simple? Like, just keep it simple, stupid.
You're nailing it, Danny. And that's the thing, is America's greatest strength has always been its people, period. I mean, and humanity's superpower is adaptability. So when you have people that, default to bureaucracy and red tape and force and coercion, which is the government's way, you always get the same thing. You get the restriction of our greatest power, and that's that adaptability. So in terms of fixing this, if you're talking to Trump and hey man, this idea of a federal income tax, yeah, get rid of that shit. All the resources that these people have at their disposal should be kept locally, because if you live in an area, you're most likely, if you're not a shithead, you're probably going to be a good steward of your own land, and you're probably going to look after your neighbors and make sure that they're not polluting or they're not doing something that's going to ruin your land. And so in these emergency situations, when they come about, if those resources aren't taken, by a bureaucracy, and shipped off to other parts of the world, and they are collected in warehouses and wrapped up in red tape where they can't be effective. This is the point, and this is why America was founded in the first place, is because it was a rejection of centralized power that was too far away and too bureaucratic to ever do anything. So if you get rid of this, this arm that reaches in, all the time, that just robs us blind and vindicates all of the people out in the hollers of Western North Carolina that have said these guys are full of shit and they're never going to be around when we need them anyway, right? Like, problem solved. And I think, this is one of the things that we concentrate over at Bitcoin Veterans. A lot of people hear, the term Bitcoin or freedom tech, and they don't really understand it. And this is freedom money. This is people's ability to understand that if you want to exit the system, this dying empire that's inflating your dollar out of existence and taking it through force and coercion, you can put it into this thing called Bitcoin, and you can learn it. If you want to figure this out, bitcoinveterans.org, we will teach you. We have a huge group of guys that teach guys this all the time. You don't have to be a veteran. This is the exit strategy. This is the parallel economy. This is how you fix culture, because it fixes the incentive structure. And when you have a culture that is built on money that some guy can print out of thin air that you have to work for and they can manipulate it, then you are literally enslaved through debt to these people. And that, when we get out of that situation where we are actually building from a place of a what they call a Austrian economy instead of a ridiculous fiat Keynesian economy that we have now, you start to build real wealth, and that can't be taken through force and coercion by the government. So I mean, if I'm talking to Donald Trump, get me RFK in here, stand up the strategic Bitcoin reserve, and let's go. Because the only way to do this is to start to decentralize. And I'm not saying we need to balkanize the entire country, but for God's sakes, the amount of power that the feds have and the states have because of money that is printed out of thin air is so counterproductive that it's gotten in the way, and it's got people killed now in the thousands, if not millions.
Yeah, and I really think it comes back to this point of bureaucracy. Like, if you just told the government, you're already not doing anything, just stay out of the way in all of these different regards. Like, I saw a video last night while I was kind of just browsing, kind of reading up, trying to catch up what was going on out there, and it was this police officer. I don't know if you saw this one, but it was like a police officer at some woman's home, and I guess there was just like a mudslide or something like that, and he was like coming out to do this like wellness check or something. And he's like she's like asking him to get off the property and leave her alone, and he's like still there and stuff. He's kind of, and like, it's just go away, like literally just get out of this person. Like, I'm sure there's a million other things that you could be doing besides harassing this poor woman, or trying to take away her kids, whatever is going on here, right? And it's kind of what Charlie and Cam are saying, like, just remove all these laws. Just let, it's like these people are already, dealing with enough difficulty, get rid of all this random red tape that is just keeping people from actually helping other people, right? It should not be that hard to just say, state of emergency, because I mean, the other piece of this too is it's like laws are usually there, in place to keep people safe, right? Is kind of the idea, right? And I remember, I don't know if you remember this story, Shane, but I think it was like Emily or one of the gals who was saying that like they had like meth heads who were basically running out, and so they were riding inflatable mattresses down the river and like looting people's houses and stuff like that. Just like crazy stories, right? And it's like, well, you aren't stopping those people, right? Like, you aren't stopping these people that like need to be stopped. Like, you're just getting in the way of the law-abiding citizens like doing what they need to do. So it's really kind of frustrating.
Yeah, and there's something to point out with Shane's point. We actually have a contact at a fire department here, and not to name any names, I don't think they want to be named like that as of yet. But we talked about having pretty solid evidence that contracts were awarded prior to them being awarded.
Oh, wow.
And it was a known fact that certain people were winning that contract when those contracts hadn't even gone out yet. So that's something that we, with the Christian Rangers and Shane with the Bitcoin Veterans, I know on Thursday he'll be here with us. That's something that we are, we're taking that and we are going to see what is happening with that. Is that something that is currently happening? And what he's saying is that 2 to 3 days before that it was awarded, that contract already went out to a company to do the cleanup process. So that's something we're digging in on.
Could you imagine in the military if a contract was awarded without the contract actually being released? People would be in jail in a heartbeat.
It has to go out for bid.
And it has to go out for bid.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's not happened. People would be in jail if that were the military. So why is this? Why are we already know the answer?
We know the
answer.
Yeah. This could turn tinfoil hat real quick. And there's a lot of good stuff there for sure. But yeah, no, I do think like, hey, look, like, the network that we've been building is kind of shifting to what Shane and I were talking about earlier with fraternal networks, right? That being the solution. Maybe we can kind of shift into that as kind of the next topic of conversation. But I wouldn't be surprised if, like, I interviewed a guy, Gord McGill, who's on Tucker. I know some people in the sphere, like a buddy of mine, his friend just went on Rogan and recorded. So it's possible that we could kind of ping some of these bigger guys and maybe get like Shane and Micah and them and Danny like on to talk about this stuff. Cause I do think that one, it's kind of left the public consciousness. People aren't really aware or talking about it. A lot of the kind of initial drive, like people had the right intentions of wanting to help, but, they were sending food and water. And I remember going into Burnsville, the fire department down there, and they wouldn't even take our food and water. And that was I don't know, a couple days in, right? Because they just had so much. And so understanding how to help people. And I really think it's down to the point now where the thing that can help the most is, kind of holding politicians to task and saying, hey, look, you need to remove the red tape. You need to stop kind of inhibiting people from helping on the ground. You have to make sure that, that these people aren't preyed upon. Because that was a big thing I was talking to Danny about when I was encouraging him to set up the 501c3 with Little Switzerland Relief is, look, you're going to have a bunch of these volunteer groups, and they're going to come in and they're going to make you all these promises, and they're going to say all this stuff. And really, they just want the government grants.
Yep.
Right. The only way to do that is to band together yourselves. Right. And that was the big thing I was encouraging. Is get the community together, get people in on this, coordinate. I think Shane, you were saying making sure the money stays local. And so if you're doing repairs, you're using local labor, you're trying to use local sources, all of that kind of stuff, because if you're actually going to, rebuild, it's very important to not be taken advantage of.
Yeah, and actually Danny held the meeting one day, and I don't even know, we haven't had this conversation. I don't know if he's even had this conversation with Micah, but Micah and I went to a meeting that Danny had with a lot of the local NGOs there, but there were a couple bigger agencies, I'll say, in that meeting, and it was pretty evident within that meeting, even what local groups were trying to help the people and what bigger groups were trying to make a buck off of the people here. I mean, and it's something that we were just people coming to help for the weekend, and we ended up our 501c with Christian Rangers went through today. So we are official as of today. We were not a thing. We were just a group of friends coming to help people. Same with everybody here. And Shane, part of us now is Christian Rangers too, the Bitcoin veterans, people just coming together, Little Switzerland. And then when we did that, it was really evident that there were a lot of different, we'll call them companies, because even as it's a 501c, it's a companies that were in it for the money. And I don't think that people realize that's what's happening, but it definitely is.
Yeah, I think that side of it. I know exactly. I think the meeting we were talking about right there in front of the place where we sat around. Oh God, and listen to one of these disaster welfare chasing whores, right? And that's being kind. Give the stats of how many disasters they've been to, what they need to be doing in terms of recording the amount of hours and time and all this really menial shit that you don't have time for. It's just, hey, what's on the docket today? What are we doing today? What are we doing tomorrow? Loud, ridiculous, loud, rap jobs on trucks and, things that obviously they're not taking the money that they're being supplied with and spending it on the actual victims, and they're spending it on themselves and living in,
it becomes,
it's wild.
I mean, I think everybody's pretty aware of that. When you get these giant organizations and you start seeing these multi-million-dollar salaries and stuff like that, and you hear about that stuff and the exposure stories that they do and stuff like that. But then you see it firsthand, but you see it at different levels too, right? It's not always just the multi-million-dollar ones. There's also a lot of other ones. I mean, they take some pretty big salaries, but that's pretty much what they do. It's all about the image they're creating and the social media presence that they're trying to put out, and everything's about donors, right? It's all about every little thing. It's about how much exposure they can get, and how can they turn it into a dollar. And I understand money is the lifeline of any business, right? But it's not the essence. The essence is the people and the customers. And that's why you take a company like Salesforce, right? And they reinvented customer service. And there's a reason for that. It's because it was all based around the people and connecting the people. And you got to remember that you can do a lot bigger, better things when money falls below that top objective.
Yeah, I think
you know, it's easy to
I think
become cynical during all this kind of stuff, and it's important to keep seeing the positivity, I guess.
yeah,
I
I
think
think a
Mike
big thing.
said it best. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just quickly going to say, like, to me, volunteer orgs are like the most exploitable opportunity for people who want to grift, because it's like, hey, look at all these people who are going to do free stuff for me, right? They're volunteering their time for free. I don't have to pay them. We're getting all these donations and government grants, like, delivering what we actually are supposed to do. It's like very loosey goosey, and it's like, who actually knows where the money goes, that kind of stuff. It's unfortunate, but the situation is very ripe for exploitation. And so if you kind of have those conditions in the system, of course, people are going to be exploited. And so I think it really falls to the locals on the ground. And then, you guys and then this was such a big thing for me going out, meeting Shane and Micah, is like, you could tell there was a genuine desire to help people, to do things right, to not worry about notoriety or timesheets or any of that kind of stuff. Just kind of do what people needed.
Good.
Sorry, Cam.
I mean that's all you got. You can boil it down to. It's just good parenting. But to your point earlier, your question, in terms of the fraternal networks and everything, I really like the idea. What we've been able to do, I think, Christian Rangers is a huge example of this. And I know, the guys over at Bitcoin Veterans, this has been one of those case in points where I think you start to see the reemergence of real masculinity. And I think also the feminine here as well, right? Is like, they're not juxtaposed to each other. They work in unison. And when you've got extremely strong people in both of those positions, that's how it works best. Because what we may be able to do on on the masculine side versus what gets brung to our attention from the feminine side, it's like this amplification. It's not that they're in opposition to each other. It's that these two things were always meant to work together. And we were, obviously meant to work together as human beings to solve these kind of things out of, good faith and making sure that hopefully, that returns to us in our time of need. So, going forward, if you're not building out, fraternal, orders within your own family, within your own community, I think, you're not doing yourself any services. And, this is what, insurance used to be. This is where, you didn't pay some nameless, faceless, corporation that was 1,000 miles away. You put that sweat labor into the people around you, put in your resources and your time and your effort, and that came back to you. People don't know it yet, but we're moving into this thing. There's this thing called the attention economy, kind of like what this is, but we're moving into a name economy. And as we transition away from this, fiat, and I know I keep mentioning it, name ID in terms of whether you're in good standing or not, that's going to carry maybe yourself, your legacy, your kids, and so forth going forward. I think this is how nature is starting to heal itself a little bit.
Yeah, no, it's funny that you mentioned that, because this is a big thing that I've been focusing on more recently. Is like the shift online seems to be, we're moving towards authenticity, right? Is part of the reason that I was like willing to face dox today, and I've been kind of like face doxing a little bit on the timeline and stuff. A good friend of mine, Lucas Computer, also came out and face doxed, and his like point was like, look, like, probably like cancellation isn't as big a problem as it used to be, right? Like, well, we're not kind of worried about the Eye of Sauron as much, but also it's like what people are looking for, as you're kind of talking about, Shane, is like name, reputation, recognition, like putting your money where your mouth is, willing to take the risks, willing to be authentic, because, and I think a part of it too is a reaction to how inauthentic so many people are these days, right? Where they like to virtue signal. They're like, oh, I care and I believe in this, and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, well, what are you actually doing? Are you actually going out? I remember it was like 3 years ago. I went on this date with this girl, and she was talking about, how like she believed that all the billionaires who had the money that were going, to like going to, like Elon and all this kind of stuff. And she's like, they're wasting all their money. They're not saving the environment. They're doing all this kind of stuff. And she was like, she was in like corporate finance or something like that. And I was like, well, what are you doing to save the environment? And she had no answer, right? Like it was all about her saying these things that sounded nice to people and being all like, indignant and mad and, but she wasn't taking any action.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think like that's the point that we are at now. And, this was the big thing for me, like going out to North Carolina, right, and helping out. Like at the whole time I was going, I was like, look, it is very important to me that this is done with the right mindset, right? That this is not about like chasing an opportunity to kind of prove authenticity or anything like that. This is because we actually care. We want to do something. We want to do it the right way. And I think Danny knows this. Like every time we'd have a conversation about what we were doing, I would always be like, look, like I'm here for you guys. You guys are the locals. You do need to be making the decisions. I mean, part of the reason that I kind of, I moved on, after kind of things were starting to get set up is because we had this one conversation the last night before I left between a bunch of the local leaders. And it was this question of, okay, where are we going to spend our money and to what degree? And like, how much are you helping people versus like, when do they start taking over and helping themselves? Right. And I was like, I'm not answering that. That's not my question to answer. Right. Like that's the locals' question to answer. And so I think like that was always a big thing for me is, making sure that if we're going to help people, like, we're doing it the right way. Right. And kind of putting our money where our mouth is with that.
Yeah, I think something that the Christian Rangers have tried to do from probably the second week was empower the people. So what we initially wanted to do was work with different people that are going to run the distribution sites. So those people locally could be in charge of their own property, right? Those are goods that are going to be given out to your people. So we had a meeting here at this beautiful house that we were able to do ops out of. And we had everybody that's in these local groups come out and let's talk about how we can move forward to empower the people, because I'm not from here. I've lived in North Carolina the past 10 years. I live in Tennessee now, but I'm not from Burnsville. So I want to know, how can I empower the people here to do this? That's what it's about. I don't want to be in charge of their supplies and be in charge of who gets what. That's not why we're here. So what we have tried to do from the beginning was that, how can we get these people to just put it in place, and then they can take it over and they can be in charge of that and they can be empowered. And sometimes it's worked out great. And then sometimes it's gone to shit because that's part of the process. And I think that we're learning. And it's actually been pretty fun to learn. But for the most part, these people know way better than I do. I was told on my first day here that I needed to go in to Kane to the river and tell people that they were mandatory evacuated, that they had to leave their homes. And I said, I cannot do that. I'm not from here. I don't know that they need to leave on a mandatory evacuation. So I won't be doing that. But that's the thing. It's like, we aren't going to tell people how to live. We want to just aid them in doing
that. 100%.
So
this
Danny,
rocket science. None of this is rocket science.
Yeah.
I don't understand where the confusion is coming down from the government. What's going on?
Yeah, we're just leaving our footprints. We're not from here. We want to just help as much as possible.
Yeah. So Danny, to kind of throw it over to you as we kind of looked at, I assume we'll kind of wrap up in the next like 10, 15 minutes or so here. But is there like any kind of like key things that you want people to know? We talked a little bit about like maybe how the government can help. It's like largely getting out of the way and lifting bureaucracy. Like if there's people out there who are listening, then they have the kind of the desire to volunteer or send money in or whatever it is. Like what would kind of be the big thing you'd want them to hear?
I would say the main thing is utilize your strengths. Figure out what it is that's your greatest strength and how you could bring that to the table and serve. Same thing like you're doing right now, right? You're half a country away, and you're putting your skills together to bring people together that are still deeply involved here every day. And I think that's it. It's just everybody has to lean on their strengths. If you want to come, connect with one of us. Go to littleswitzerlandrelief.org. There's a ton of different ways to do that. Go to the Christian Rangers. If you guys have a website, like there's Project Skyline up the road. Like a lot of people that here are doing so many different things, from building homes to, we've done the volunteers that have come through, like just in this area, we've been able to do over like millions of dollars worth of tree work that otherwise these people would have had to pay for. Just get connected and come in and realize that there's almost nothing too small that you can do. I had no idea this was going to turn into this when I came home. I had a plane ticket to go backpacking through Patagonia, and when I came home, I had no idea what was going to be happening. And I just, when it happened, I came back, got as many supplies, and then just next thing I know, you're in town, right? Like everybody just starts showing up. I didn't expect that at all, and it's amazing. If you show up, there is always a way you can help. So reach out to local organizations, get connected. If you want us to we'll put you on an email list. We're calling all these people every day, finding out what their needs are. We'll put you on there, whether you're filling out an Amazon wish list or you've got access to, whatever it may be, corporate funds, whatever, things just to really make a difference. So don't think that any effort is too small. I had a friend that connected me just with one friend, connected to another friend, another friend, another friend. Next thing I knew, there was an operation that was shutting down because they didn't have a place. And the next day, there were helicopters flying up with 100 volunteers and overland vehicles and all kinds of crazy stuff that did an amazing amount of work. And that literally would not have happened except one of my friends over a beer talked to somebody else and said, "Hey, I know a guy that lives up there, maybe he can help you out." And that kind of stuff happens. So there's a trickle effect and a ripple effect that is huge. So don't think just because you're somewhere and you don't feel connected that you're not.
Danny, that's a great point, because I think something that we have always pointed out is that we are not going to be good at everything. And we have realized what our strengths are and what our weaknesses are. And we don't do logistics well. So what we did was we paired with Resilience Recovery in Marion. And anytime somebody wants to send us goods, we know that that's not our strong suit. We send them to Marion. That's what we call our warehouse, but it's working with other NGOs to do the same task. Because there's no reason that I need to be taking in like this big egotistical thing where I need to feel like I do everything. Is if you at Little Switzerland do something well, please go to youth to do that. Like we all just want the same thing. We want humanity over government. We want to help the people. We can't be everything. We don't want to be everything. We want everybody to come to the table and we want everybody to eat.
Yeah, the best boss makes themselves completely irrelevant. I think that's the job here, is to make ourselves as irrelevant as possible. It's not to stick around. It's not to be some big entity that hangs around. We're all here just so that our main objective is to disappear. Yeah, that's the objective, is just not to be needed. Like your best neighbors are the ones that are always there, but you don't hear from them that much because they they're self-reliant, and but you can count on them, and this kind of stuff reminds you of that.
Awesome. Yeah. So Shane, also I'll kind of throw it to you again as we're looking to wrap up here. Like any kind of thoughts as far as what do you think kind of the next phase of what people need to be thinking about with North Carolina? Maybe we can get you on Tucker or Rogan or something like that, but and then maybe just kind of next steps for the Bitcoin veterans.
One of the things that I think is sorely missing, obviously, is just this, us getting together and talking about this kind of thing. And I would challenge, and I put out the invite now. I'll host this next time on my show. Getting you guys together and talking about what's going on is one of those things I think we're going to have to do. And I think, I want to say the finish line is spring, but I think that's the closest goal that we have, right? Is get as many people to spring as possible, and then take it from there. We've got to, I mean, if you guys don't understand winters in the Appalachians, especially at altitude, which is exactly what this area is, it's rough. Don't forget about it. If you guys need contact points, whether it's Danny up there at Little Swiss, or Christian Rangers, Bitcoin veterans, you can contact any of us, and we're not hard to find. We're all over social media. If you want to help, we can direct you to the right people. We can get you involved. We can if you want to go and help, if you want to drop off supplies, whatever that is. And we are often doing updates of what exactly needs to be done in the area as well. So I'd like to continue to get people together to get the message out. I think one of the biggest places out there, that we can help out with in terms of being eyes on the ground is really doing the account of what is going on in terms of the news on the ground, countering fifth generation warfare. If you guys don't understand what fifth generation warfare is, there are things that were going around about different groups that were helping that were completely made up with no evidence whatsoever, trying to disparage the volunteers on the ground. And when you start to see that and counter that, that's where their entire narrative begins to break down, and they lose, what little sense of importance and relevancy that they have left. So I think, for a lot of us, that's going to be the case, but it's going to be more or less combating the fifth generation warfare, continuing to get the news out about what's in the area, continuing to get good intel out so that we can make sure that these people get through the spring.
Yeah, this is an intel war. Like, we can't forget that. This is exactly what's going on. It's an intel war.
Yeah, the world needs to know that Western North Carolina lives matter.
Yeah, and especially kind of to what Shane's saying here is, like, it's so easy for the narrative to drop, and it's and to be polluted too, right? As you're kind of saying that there's bad actors on the ground kind of trying to kind of slander the volunteers who are coming in, right? Like, to me, I think I had a buddy who lives in the PNW. A couple years ago, there was a fire that came through, and he had good local community connections, and they ended up staying and fighting the fire. And a lot of times the fire departments that would come through would tell them to leave, and they were like, no, screw you, we're staying. Or like or the fire departments would tell them, like, oh, we're not helping this house because they don't have the insurance with the company that we're with, or whatever it was, right? And he kind of realized, it was crazy because I heard the story only a couple months before North Carolina happened, but just to the degree that a bunch of people who are driven from the community, who are local, like, they make the government look horribly incompetent, right? Like, it's just,
they get real mad.
So they don't want the volunteers around, because the volunteers basically prove that these things can be done cheaply, effectively, and quickly, right? And they don't want to, have a bunch of people showing them up. And so I think that's probably part of the reason that they were so adverse to letting people in and doing this stuff, is because they just didn't want to let people see how incompetent and kind of not only not being there when they needed to be, but also getting in the way a lot. All right. Well, I think we've hit all the points. Charlie and Cam, do you also want to give like a little bit of a wrap up, and then we'll close it out?
Yeah, I think from our perspective, if you want to help, if you're wondering how you can help, we're not going to take like, hey, come help us, because we're not even in that perspective right now where we're taking a lot of volunteers. We want you to go to where the help is needed. So if you want to contact us, we can put you in need with those groups that we are in contact with that actually have people out there doing the thing that needs doing. But we have a warehouse in Marion, and that does need volunteers, because we got a 3-story humongous warehouse that needs to be organized. So we are actively taking volunteers to work that. And then we have people that are everyday people that need help taking down their house, burning.
The elderly need help.
The elderly need help. We're working with a fire chief out here, and that's really where our main contacts are going. But don't be afraid to reach out to us, Bitcoin veterans, like Danny at the Little Switzerland Relief Society, because we're not trying to like stovepipe the help. We want everybody to get it. So just try to help in any way possible. We just want to make sure that the word is out that people need the help still. And even though it's almost 2 months in, people here actively still need people just here to help them. And we are just grateful for anything that we do get. So thank you. And that picture that I see up there, thank you. That's a flag that we found in the river that we actually gave to the mayor of Yancey County. Burnsville. Sorry, Burnsville. And he yeah. My dog going nuts.
I'm just gonna say, all of you guys are awesome. I mean, what an awesome group of people to be, associated with. I mean, if you guys would have, I wish you could have seen these guys in action. Absolutely incredible people.
Yeah, we're just trying to be like you.
Yeah.
Oh,
pretty
please.
much. It's like we're in the gym right now. They're trying to get big like Shane.
Yeah.
Wait, I want to keep my hair.
Hey, me too.
You heard that?
Live up to your own legend, my man. No, that's awesome.
Oh, I realized I was muted. I was like, oh shit, no, but it's
the doggy here is my dog that I donated while I was out here, brother. Or that donated, not donated. The dog that you hear in the background of Cam and I speaking, she was found off Pensacola Road. So she's a little feral. She's a little wild like her mom. And she's just going nuts. She's our guard dog here at the Christian Rangers house. So excuse her. Nice. No, it's good to have those kinds of dogs around. But no, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for taking the time and joining me. It's again, it's really heartwarming to see what you all were doing. And obviously this is a story that isn't ending or going away anytime soon. I think that it'll be good to kind of do more on this. Danny, I also want to get some more of the locals. I forget the name of that young guy who was coming through. He just got engaged, and he was doing a lot of the yard work and the tree work and stuff like that. You know who I'm talking about?
Yeah, I think you're talking about Dalton.
Yeah, I think it's Dalton. But he's got a great story, because I think he was cutting down trees day one off the road and stuff like that. So there's a lot of amazing
cut
stories.
Out the parkway with my neighbor Roger. Yeah. Well, 60 National Guards have I watched.
Yeah,
because they didn't have chainsaws.
Or maybe they were electric.
That was the story I heard. Yeah, that's what they told me. So
yeah,
so
we'll get more
good people here.
Yeah, definitely want to get more people on and to tell the stories. I think Melon in the comments was talking about how it's really important that we kind of capture those stories before they kind of disappear from memory. Especially it was tough while you were out there. It's hard to keep track of the million things going on. But no, it was a pleasure chatting with you all. I'm going to probably put this up as a podcast as well, so we can put that out, and I'll include links to donations and stuff like that, so we can get some more people kind of sending money the right way. Because I think that's been a big thing for me, is a lot of people are asking, where do I send help? How do I help out? But they're very wary of making sure that the money is actually going to locals, is actually going to be helpful. They don't trust FEMA, the government groups, a lot of these volunteer orgs. And I think that's the beautiful thing about what you guys have been doing, is you're not just Danny being a local and setting up his stuff, but you guys coming in and being on the ground, working with your hands. It's it's a show that you're really actually trying to do the right thing, and it's great to see. So thanks again for coming on. It was great pleasure having you all. And I like to end every stream by saying it was never over, and we've never been more back. So we'll catch you all on the next one. Thanks everyone.
Thank you.